Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is obviously a match day preview show because it is Wednesday night and you know what happens now. And I'm pleased to say that I, firstly, might not be the most miserable fan on tonight's preview show because this weekend we head very, very north to take on League Two's basement team, Carlisle United. And I'm pleased to say that Lee Rooney from the brilliant Brunton Bugle podcast, details will be in the description at the bottom of the video, has come on to join me ahead of said fixture. Lee, first of all, I'm not going to ask how you are, certainly in terms of football, but do appreciate you coming on. We've just said before we press record, this isn't going to be the most positive of chats, is it?
No, I suppose not. It's funny because I'm always seen by a lot of our fans as an optimist. I mean, if you went back and looked and worked out all the predictions that I've done over the last few years in our little prediction bit at the end of each preview pod, we'd probably be top of the championship right now if you believed what I'd said. So yeah, it's someone's got to be positive, haven't they? Yeah, it's been an interesting 6 months since we last met, hasn't it?
Interesting, depressing, sad,
Yeah.
rubbish. Yeah, there's plenty of words that could describe them. Probably a lot of words that we can't use because there might be children watching. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. I've always tended to be the glass half full one myself, and a couple of fans have said to me in recent weeks, have said, if you're struggling and you're miserable, then it must be really, really bad. And
Yeah.
it's not been good for either side. Like you say, Saturday, 10th of August seems like a million miles away going there. We'll talk about that in a sec, Lee. If we look at recent form, we'll start with Carlisle United for all the Gills fans. It's 4 points from the last 18 available. That was in the form of a win against Fleetwood, but since then it's no win in 5 defeats against Notts County, a thrashing against Swindon, more narrow defeats against Grimsby and Newport, and then most recently a goalless draw against Colchester United to somewhat stop the rot. So we know where Carlisle are. Unfortunately, it's 24th in League Two with 22 points from 31 games. Gills, not any better. No wins in the previous 6. 2 winning draws in the last time, though, to try and give us some positivity. But yeah, it's exactly the same amount of points, 4 from 18, and we currently sit 19th with 34 points from 30 games. Lee, I've written down Saturday, 10th of August feels like a lifetime ago, given how the seasons of both clubs have now panned out. On that day, it was Mark Bonner versus Paul Simpson. Both sides fancied to do relatively well, but now things could not be more different. Over to you.
Yeah, it's just not turned out anywhere near like we expected this season. I think for both clubs, I think when we did our preseason previews, I think we all had you guys down in top 3 pretty much. I mean, you were third favourites in terms of the bookies. You look to have signed, well, you had a manager who's done it before from this level. You kind of like thinking, okay, they've got a really good chance. And obviously with the 4-1 win on that day, which looking back probably did flatter you guys a little bit, that scoreline. It was quite a tight game in the end. And it's one of those sliding doors moments. If Charlie White's shot goes in the back of the net instead of hitting the bar, could have been the other way around. It could have been a different result. We could have got to a good start of the season, and as it was, we then went on to only win one of our next like 7 or 8 or something like that. Stupid. So it's yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned the fact that our most recent win was the one against Fleetwood. The team that started against Fleetwood was a completely different 11 from the 11 that started the game against you guys on the opening day.
That's mad.
That
Like, I mean, I
which
know
is that
player churn, but that's ridiculous, isn't it?
that is a testament to how poor our recruitment probably was last summer. If we're being brutally honest, the 1 or 2 decent players in there, but too many just were not up to it. And yeah, Paul Simpson lost his job. To be honest, Paul Simpson should have lost his job in the summer. I wanted to back him because he's a club legend. We all want him to do well, but we should have let him go in the summer and said, "Look, we're going to look at something different here," because the owners clearly wanted to go down a different path, playing passing football, attacking football, very exciting, whatever that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've heard similar.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tale as old as time, isn't it? So obviously he's gone. They bring in Mike Williamson, and I don't necessarily think Williamson is a bad coach or a bad manager. He clearly did a brilliant job at Gateshead. He did a fairly good job at NK until those playoff games.
Yep.
Um, but those playoff games exposed his biggest fault. He is so stubborn with his style of play, so dogmatic. There's no pragmatism in there in terms of the way he wants to play. It's my way, the highway. Ironically, very much the same as what's happening at Man United at the moment. He wants to play that 3-4-2-1. He insists on playing it. He doesn't tweak from it really. And it's killed us because we didn't have the players for it. And he started off okay, but then like he just couldn't get that form. Then we had a run in November where we got a win in a run of draws. We got some good draws against Doncaster and Crewe. So we thought, yeah, you know what? There's signs of improvement here.
Mhm.
And then we were supposed to play Newport at the start of December. And he got called off due to that, I think, one of the storms that happened.
Yeah.
And that gave him 2 weeks to work with the squad. And that's probably the worst thing that could have happened because he went out there and he went and tweaked the team. Didn't change formation, but he tweaked the team, took Callum Guy out. And we got beat 2-0 by Chesterfield. And after the game, it was like, well, was Guy injured? Why was he on the bench? He's like, no, just wanted to keep him fresh for the games at winter. As it was, Callum Guy picked up an illness and hasn't played since then. So it's kind of like you shoot yourself in the foot there. And then we lost 2-0 against Morecambe on Boxing Day. The fans really turned against him there because of his stubbornness and the way he wanted us to play. And that was probably the first opportunity they had to potentially sack him. They didn't take it. And then we got a result against Accrington. We dug in. And to be honest, all the wins we got under him weren't playing good football. It was when we dug in, actually, ironically. And then we lost against Tranmere at the start of January, and we were absolutely appalling then. And, you know, at that point, we were told we were expecting maybe 3 or 4 players, maybe 5 players coming in January, okay? We lose 1-0 at Tranmere. And the fans really turned on him again, not sacked. And he was allowed to basically sign 12 players in January. It was 11 or 12, I can't remember.
This is what we couldn't work out as outsiders, which is what I'm going to ask you, because it just looked completely wrong. I mean, we had it the year we came out of League One. We sacked Steve Evans at the start of the window and then didn't appoint Neil Harris until transfer deadline day.
Yeah.
Whereas you've gone the other way and you've said, right, Mike William can sign all these players. And then I think the announcement was made like hours after deadline had closed. It just didn't make any sense at all.
I think it was made just before that, the morning of the transfer deadline. So,
right.
Yeah, so he was allowed to sign all these players in January. There was a few signs of improvement against Fleetwood. And against Notts County, we played really well, but lost 1-0. And then the Swindon game came. And we had a man sent off in there. Jordan Jones was sent off. And the scoreline is a little bit misleading because they got 2 goals very late on the break when we were pushing to try and get another goal to get back in it when we made it 3-1. But just the manner of it was just a bit like his complete inability to change his tactics and style and his stubbornness, and the fans never really took to him, and it was just inevitable after that game. And then at that point, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, you've basically allowed a manager to go out and sign a load of players to fit his very specific style of football, and then you've decided the day after the deadline or the day of the deadline you're going to sack him. It was kind of like, where on earth do we go from here?
No,
it
it's
was
almost like you just relegated yourselves, isn't it?
It was bizarre, and look, at that point, there's a lot of people saying, "Who the hell would take on this job?" But I think actually a lot of people, because actually a lot of the players he signed were quite good. There's some decent players in there, and yeah, there was a moment of like, oh, a few names are flying about. I mean, one name that flew about for a bit was Mark Kennedy, and we were kind of like, why have we been appointing Mark Kennedy after he's been sacked at Swindon fairly recently? There was Stuart Kettlewell who'd walked out on Motherwell because of the abuse he was getting. It's like, well, out the frying pan into the fire if you come to us. And then it sort of settled down on 2 names, and it was John Brady was one. And I think unanimously, the fans were all like, John Brady, yep, we'd be happy with that. Good appointment, someone who knows the league. There was a worry that he may be becoming a little bit quickly out of having left Northampton. But then, you know what, he seems to know the league. He's done it here before, be a good appointment. And then at the last minute, Mark Hughes' name popped out of nowhere. And I think some fans at first were a bit negative about it. I think the problem was he was obviously manager of Bradford, and we had there's this weird faux rivalry with Bradford online with some of our fans, and everything that happened with the playoff games and stuff like that a few years ago. And we've sort of said this since we've had a little bit of a reflection on it since. If he'd never managed Bradford, if you take that spell out and he just come to manage us, we'd all be like, wow, we just got Mark Hughes as
really
manager.
Good appointment, yeah.
But it's like, how on earth have we managed that? So sometimes you have to take a little step back and give it a bit of context. And I think a lot of our fans have come round to it. I think he's saying all the right things. He's acting the right way. He's trying to get the fans on side. He's trying to, cheer them up at games, which Williamson was never really particularly good at, if we're honest. And so far, the results haven't quite come yet, but the underlying figures that I've been looking at suggest that there is a clear sign of improvement on game. Plus, the big thing for us was the game against Colchester. He recognised the first half they dominated, and he made changes at halftime. He changed the formation, he changed the way we played it, and we got on top. And it's kind of like, all right, we've got a manager who can do that now. that's an encouraging sign. So, yeah, it's an appointment that I think a section of our fan base probably wouldn't have been happy with and we're happy with at the time. But I think most fans are coming around to the idea and they kind of accept, look, he's got to deal with the mess that's been left behind by Williamson of a team that even when you've replaced all the players, they've basically been infected by this losing mentality and he needs to get them back on side and get them performing again. So yeah, he's got a tough task, but I wouldn't bet against him doing it, to be fair.
That was one of my questions because you are rock bottom. You've
Yeah.
won 5 games all season. As it stands, you're still 2 or 3 wins away from safety.
Yeah.
That's basing on Tranmere and Accrington and those teams just above the line losing them football matches as well.
Yeah.
So it could be more than that, which makes it very difficult when you've only won 5 of your first 31 and you're asking him to potentially have to match that in 15 football matches.
At least.
So, and I want to ask this based on, because when we sacked Mark Bonner at the start of January, we appointed John Coleman the very same day and said, right, the playoffs are still attainable. I think we were 14th at the time. For me, the transfer window then didn't back that up. It looked like a very much a consolidation window in terms of we signed 1 permanent and four youngsters on loan. So it said to me, we're not going to overspend because, which has now come out to be fair, because there was a Q&A with the owner and the managing director on X after the Barrow thrashing. And it said that they was honest in that. And they said basically the first window after Brad Gallinson took over still equates to 70% of our budget because we had to overpay to keep ourselves up.
Yeah.
Because we were in exactly the same situation as you in January 2023. So I can understand that. But so in a long-winded way, I'm getting to the question for you, Lee. Okay. Is Mark Hughes' appointment one that says we're seriously going to try and stay up? Because, and I mean this with the most respect to yourselves as a football club and the National League, would Mark Hughes be willing to work in that division if what plenty would say the inevitable happens and that you drop out of the Football League?
Well, I think it is a serious point because I think when you look at some of the names that were flying, some of the options, he looks to me one of the better ones. And we have built a squad to play in a particular style. And to be fair on Hughes, he's been known for generally getting his teams to play decent football down the. I mean, if you talk to Stoke fans about what it was like with them, 3 ninth place finishes in a row and playing good football, so they all seem to really like him. And he didn't have to take on this job. He wasn't like, by all accounts, he applied for it. It wasn't a case.
I don't mean, sorry, I don't know if I've got that wrong. If I say it's a serious point, I think it's a serious appointment. But is the contract a long-term one so that Mark Hughes works in the National League if you get relegated? Sorry, I didn't mean it. That's definitely. I think he's a good manager.
No, I'm just saying. So he applied for the job himself.
Okay.
And rather than being approached from what I've read, and he's on a rolling contract now. This is something that Williamson was on as well. So it's kind of worked in our favour, really. We paid the money to get out Williamson, but the idea was he's on a rolling contract. Obviously, with something like that, usually there'll be some sort of deal. You get paid up a year if you leave or something like that. So he's got a rolling contract. He didn't have to take the job on at the end of the day. He could have easily gone and, he's probably earned decent money from his management jobs in the top flight. He could have gone and done a bit of punditry and things like that if he really wanted. But he clearly wants to be a coach and he wants to do well. And it depends on how the season finishes, I think. He might look at it and think if it doesn't end very well, if we struggle to get any sort of wins, you might take a look and say, look, someone else needs to have a go at this and he can, leave and no one's going to blame him for what's happened. But yeah, whether he stays or not, if we go down or not, I really don't know. It's hard to judge. I mean, it'd be a weird situation to be in that off the field we've never been in better shape, and yet we could potentially on the field be set for a second successive relegation because of bad decision making at the end of the day.
Yeah, we've said the same in terms of what the Gallinsons have done off the pitch since coming in. It's been absolutely brilliant. It's just the football side has. Well, I'll say not caught up. That's probably polite, but yeah, it's certainly not improved or certainly gone the way as we as fans would have liked, and probably as they as an ownership partnership would have liked as well. We've won 14 games from 61 between us this season, so that's 56 points from a possible 183. So it's a miracle number. There's not one that we've not seen any alcohol consumed on this this episode so far. you have to joke about it because it drives you mad otherwise, doesn't it? I think you have to try and see the
Yeah.
funny side a little bit. Are there any positives from a Carlisle United perspective to come out of this season? Is there a youngster that's come in and stepped up who you thought maybe wasn't good enough and has now proved his worth, or has it just been that rank bad that you cannot wait for game 46 to finish and at least you'll know where you are and what you'll be doing next season?
I still stand by that. I think actually we have got still a fairly decent squad that's just been mismanaged badly for too long with this rigid way of playing. I think there's plenty of good play. I mean, Kadeem Harris looks a great player when he's on form. You know, you shouldn't be playing at this level really. If you talk about someone who's come through, also Gabe Rees is the big one for us as goalkeeper. You know, he's taken Harry Lewis's role as number one about a third into the season, and he's kept the shirt since then. And
because Lewis was poor against us, wasn't he? If I remember, didn't he?
He's
Dropped the cross for the first goal after about 5 minutes and didn't seem to recover after that.
His confidence has just completely gone, Harry, bless him. And Gabe's a young lad who's come through our academy. He's like 21, I think he's now, and yeah, he looks like the future. You know, he's got even though he's got a haircut from the 90s with the lovely curtains he has, but he's you might have seen, or your watchers might have seen last weekend against Colchester, he pulled off one of the best saves I've seen live ever. It was just ridiculous. So it was a chance for I think Jack Payne played a cross in for them, and Lyle Taylor was there to try and hammer it in, and he just threw himself at it. And how he got strong in a fist to not only save it but push it over the bar is just ridiculous. It was a stunning save. So he's really on form in terms of the way he's played. He's not really put a foot wrong, to be honest, since he's gone in net. He's not. I'm trying to think.
I hope you just jinxed him. I'm not going to lie. I hope you have just jinxed him.
I know. I've just done that. Should have kept my gob shut there. Because even the 5-1 against Swindon, he didn't have a bad game there. He didn't do anything wrong. It was, I mean, arguably maybe the fifth goal was a corner that went in directly, but at that point it was the last kick of the game, and it was just a bit of a shambles. Yeah, he's probably the only thing. The only thing is just everything off the field. It's just like it's so much better than it was. You know, anyone coming up to the game this weekend will see, you know, the improvements around the ground are just like unthinkable from what it was a few years ago. So if they're coming up, I 100% recommend going to the fan zone, which is basically behind the main stand at the ground. Away fans are very welcome. There's a huge screen, and when I say huge, I mean huge screen there that they show the early kickoffs in on it, and like 2 or 3 beer stalls and stuff. So the facilities there are great. They've put new facilities behind the Warwick Road in for the fans. So the fans there no longer have to pee against a wall with a trough, which is what they had originally. It was
proper football.
horrendous, but like the proper modern facilities in there. And even like the East stand that you guys will be sat in, at the back of that, we finally fitted out the executive boxes in there. So they sold out pretty much as soon as they were finished. And you know, in terms of what they're putting into the club off the field, the Piatek family is just unbelievable. And you know, we've got a new training ground away. They've probably spent, I think, if taking away player budget stuff, they will have spent in terms of off the field stuff once the training ground gets built as well, and paying off the debt, somewhere between 10 and 11 million, if not more, in terms of investing in the club. Like,
it's just hope that you've still got a Football League club to support next season, then for them and yourselves.
Yeah, and none of that's debt as well. They've put it all in as capital, which is just like, you know, that's the dream for clubs at this level. And yet, on the pitch, we just can't seem to quite get it right. I think they're still learning stuff. We've got a sporting director set up now as well and things like that. So I think it's been a bigger learning curve maybe than they hoped. And I'm kind of hoping they're getting to the grips of it now. And that someone like Hughes with a bit of nous and a bit of experience can get us away from trouble. And look, if he keeps us up, I think he earns the right to be our manager next year. And then
absolutely.
see where things go from there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, there seems to be a lot of similarities between ourselves and yourselves in terms of new people come in, clearly care, clearly want the best for the football club and the community, but it's just that it's that old adage, isn't it, that you can have, you know, all the best bits going off around the ground and outside the ground. But people predominantly come to watch the stuff on the green grass, and you need to get that right as well, don't you? So fingers crossed that after we beat you on Saturday, you win plenty of your final games and do manage to stay in the division. You just looked at your squad. I mean, you look at that squad, it shouldn't be anywhere near it. Like Harry Lewis has come from Bradford. That was a team that was challenging for the playoffs. People like Aaron Hayden, Paul Dummett, loads of experience, Sam Lavelle, Terrell Thomas in defence. You've signed people like Stephen Wayne, Ethan Robson, Josh Vella's been decent before. I'm not saying he's, they're playing well at the moment, but it's certainly not a side that should be 24th in the 92nd in the entire football league for me.
No, Josh Vella's not exactly a popular player of our fans. He's not being great, to be brutally honest. He's out injured as well anyway, so he almost certainly won't feature this weekend. But you're right.
Another one.
Yeah. Embleton's looked great. Well, he's not great. It's probably a bit over the top, but he's got better as the games have gone on, and you can see there's an ability there that's played at a higher level, definitely.
Yeah, and then even like you say, your forward Charlie White, has been around the block, knows how to score goals at this level, and it's a strange one. And I do honestly hope that after Saturday you do manage to pull yourselves free from it, unless it's at our expense, because we need to start winning football matches. Well, Lee, before we finish this one up, the dreaded score prediction. I've written mine down.
I've got to be positive. I can't not be, because we need wins now. We got the draw against Colchester. That was an improvement. I'm going to go for a narrow, nervy 2-1 win of the weekend, I think.
I mean, it doesn't scream thriller, does it? Looking at it, you're 24th in the home table with 11 goals scored. We're 16th in the away table with only 9 goals scored. So it doesn't say 4-4 draw. I can't get away from the fact that it's either going to be 0-0 or 1-0 either way. It's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game of football. I think it's going to be quite attritional and two sides desperate to try and win a football match. We've not won under John Coleman, so I know John will be desperate to try and get that first win under his belt. We've had what I'd call 2 winning draws recently against Walsall and Crewe after that absolutely disgusting non-performance at Barrow, but we shall see what happens come 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Gills fans and Carlisle fans, if you are still listening at this point, then I always say thank you. I really do appreciate it. Please hit that like button and please consider pressing subscribe. I think we're 8 away now from 3,600 subscribers. If we can get there before the weekend, it would be greatly appreciated. Like I say, Lee's details and the podcast details are in the description at the bottom of this video. So go and give them a follow on X for all Carlisle perspectives before, during and after the game. I will not be travelling up to Carlisle at the weekend, unfortunately, but those who are, be safe, be loud, be proud, and please bring home at least a point. 3 would be absolutely brilliant. I shall return Sunday evening with a match day review, hopefully talking about John Coleman's first winning charge. But if not, the wait will continue. But until then, the most important thing, as always, up the Gills.